Hello and welcome back to Recycled Screenings number 3. I am so thrilled to be joined by a friend, someone I know outside of this little box of the internet, who I've gotten to know, I guess, almost a year now. I've known you, Dayna McLeod, who is a multi hyphenate to the extreme, like scholar, artist, video essayist, video artist, performer, million different things. And we're here to discuss a few works that you can now see at recycledscreenings.com. And I was just saying to Dana before we started recording, my impulse here is going to be to like get into the nitty gritty of each individual work, but I think that's unless we want to talk for like many hours, which I know that we could do. So we'll have to have this is going to have to be like a prequel to like a longer podcast conversation. So this is really just a taster. But Dana, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. It's so good to chat with you and to see you.
I know. And
Yeah.
I know it's I guess I would have seen you last right at the UMass conference, which feels like a million years ago, but I guess it was only
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
But the video essay world goes on. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk to you today. So, we first met through kind of the video essay world of, Middlebury and that kind of thing. Um, but for you, video essay has been like all these terms are so like all over the place. But I remember in speaking to you about video essays when we first met, you had this long-standing critical practice. So I'd be curious, and we're going to be talking about some works today that are over 10 years old.
Hmm.
And so I would just be curious to have you first just introduce yourself to the audience and to hear specifically about the artistic and critical traditions in which you draw from in your work. Um, I'm asking you to summarize a lot there, but I think that's just a good general place to start that we can kind of pick through as we go.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no problem. So my name is Dayna McLeod, and I'm a video and performance artist based in Montreal. And yes, as you said, Will, we met at Video Camp at Middlebury a year ago. I was lucky enough to do an online, I want to say shorter, but extend-a-mix video camp, was introduced to video essay making by Katie Grant and Liz Green. We did a kind of over a couple months over Zoom during the pandemic. And yeah, it just really kind of struck me. I was really, really impressed with, well, first of all, I mean, Katie and Liz, amazing, amazing. And just the work they presented and just some of the, I guess, the critical thinking around video essay making really resonated with me in terms of how I've been looking at pop culture. So yeah, so I'm not answering your question at all. That's that's how I got into video essay making. In terms of my traditions of, I guess of where I come from, or and by that I mean, artistic practice, come from cabaret, come from performance art, feminist performance art, queer performance art. These types of disciplines, cabaret on stage. A lot of works that my video works that I appear in were first for the stage, or for a cabaret specifically that I translated for the screen. So yeah, how's that for a start?
It's the perfect start. And so for you, when do you start experimenting with moving image specifically? And was your practice always um, foregrounded in the digital? Like, were you uploading works online? Like, what were some of your first and earliest video works?
Oh, well, now I'm a little bit older than you. So in terms of, I mean, in terms of the digital now, yes, for sure. But shooting on high eight, shooting on mini DV, shooting on things, before any bandwidth allowed for video production or watching. I started editing on Premiere, I want to say like 5.0, and then made the big switch to Final Cut 1.0. in the 90s. But yeah, certainly, I guess, first video shoot in 1995 when I was living in Calgary. And I got a little scholarship through a artist friend center there called EM Media. But like big porta pack, kind of back-breaking equipment and gear to shoot, and then uploading it onto an Avid system, computerized system. So, yeah, kind of like old school technologies for sure, and then, skipping ahead many years, but like portable and smaller cameras certainly changed that, and then, of course, with us all shooting on our phones now, um, that has changed things. I guess a significant thing for me was, YouTube, 'cause had developed a practice that was very much talking to the camera, doing talking head, jump cut bits, and then when, YouTube comes on the scene, it seemed like everybody was doing that style, so I gotta say I really, took a few years to not do that type of work, to kind of sort that out, to sort out my representation of myself, but also how I wanted to interact with those technologies.
Mm,
So that, yeah, that kind of the digital, like, networked environment changed and affected my practice for sure.
mhm.
But in
And
terms, oh, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in terms of looking with, working with existing material, I also draw a lot on remix practices, and certainly pop culture has influenced, and I use it on stage, like, so, early work. I want to say in the 2000s. So you're in America and you have the eagle. In Canada, we have the beaver. So in the 2000s, I made a beaver outfit, and did kind of like bad stand up as this beaver who has just recently, found their feminist identity, on stage. And I had a series of these, and one of the first things I did was I downloaded a Discovery Channel documentary about beavers, and recut it to make a sing along karaoke video to Peggy Lee's Fever. But I changed every instance of fever to beaver in my kind of voiceover. And so when I
That's
performed
okay.
this, I would set up a little screen, and then people would, sing along. And for me, that kind of collaborative aspect of pop culture was really exciting. So
Mm,
on stage, or whether, kind of simply for screen work, of what are people's relationship to that given media, song, text, TV show, whatever. Is there something funny that can be done with it? Certainly was,
mhm,
especially doing cabaret, was interested in making the people's laugh. And what is our relationship to it?
mm,
So I'm always kind of like looking for and interested in collaborative ways too to use these types of medias, or very aware that, thank you for watching, sincerely, that someone on the other end is watching, and to be able to make that connection.
mm. When we talk about, again, I'm like fighting myself because I have like 50 follow-up questions that I want to ask, but I'm hoping we'll get to them
Mhm.
eventually. But I just, for someone watching that has heard the term video art, like,
Yeah.
I think it's something, you might encounter it in a gallery. Now you might encounter it on YouTube or at a film festival, like in a bunch of different places. How do you understand what video art is? In a grand scale would be great, but I think more specifically to kind of how you think about it in your practice, like
Mm.
what makes a video artist, and kind of what works are influential to you, and kind of how do you see yourself operating within kind of that practice?
Great question. I guess for me, I've been very influenced by video art practices and conceptual practices of the 70s, and looking at single takes, looking at long takes. I was, a lot of my earlier work got really obsessed with this. It has to be in one long take, for video. But also just that experience of, and by that I mean, what is happening within. I'm sorry, this sound really pretentious. I'm trying to
No.
talk about video art in a non-pretentious way as it relates to my practice. but what do you want to share with the audience? But also against, and I'm saying against, but not necessarily against traditional fictional conventions of storytelling, movie making, media making, right?
Mhm.
Perhaps I can segue into an example. And I'm aware of kind of trying to keep remix practices and existing media practices kind of over here, as well as complete original content that one is producing for oneself. So kind of keeping these two things juggling at the same time. And so certainly when I'm making work or making video art, and influenced by or looking at what I'm looking for, or that experience, I guess. Like I'm thinking about Chris Burden's work. I'm thinking about Yoko Ono's work. I'm thinking about artists from the '70s, again with kind of more conceptual practices that maybe to say a Hollywood cinema viewer, it might just seem really weird. So I don't know that I'm being very articulate about those things. I'm just very aware to not be pretentious about talking about video art. What I when I'm making stuff, I am starting kind of with a concept, and it might not be, a 5 act concept or arc. It might just be one thing, a gesture or
Mhm.
something that is happening within the frame and within that moment.
Mhm.
Something again in my earlier work with the one takes I was very interested in was background, midground, foreground, of having things happening in the background behind me as I'm telling a monologue or giving a monologue, and the viewer having to kind of decide, I cannot pay attention to you in the foreground and what's going on in the background at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think that that's certainly something that I'm interested in, about certainly telling a story, or showing an experience, or tapping into, or trying to share an experience through the screen with someone
Mhm.
that's watching. um, and is it relatable? And if
Mhm.
it's not relatable, then is that kind of the point as well? How about
Mhm.
that?
The performativity aspect is so essential to really, the works that we've decided to show as part of this. And before we get into those specifically, because then I also want to ask you about kind of to contextualize the works that we're
Mhm,
watching, but we're kind of taking the big picture view here first. Discuss for me, with us, the role of performativity in your work. And because on the one hand, it was interesting for me to hear you say that um this kind of interesting of like video has to be in a single take or what have you as like an early artistic influence, because when I think of your work, I think of like how finally your editing skills and the role that editing plays in your work. And so it's a mix of editing and performance, and so I'm curious how those come to inform one another
mm.
um in kind of in the creation of the video that we ultimately end up watching.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's definitely a relationship again between, let's say, a work that I've staged for cabaret. So let's
Mhm.
use it as an example.
Mhm.
In your playlist, I think you're including "That's Right, Diana Barry, You Needed Me." So this is like
Yes.
very Canadian pace. And so, just the long and the short of it, for some of your viewers who may not be familiar with Anna Green Gables, right? So, this is a Canadian institution. Anne Murray, who is a Canadian institution. And so this piece, which is about 6 minutes long, started off as a performance for a cabaret in Toronto called Anne Made Me Gay, which was curated by some friends of mine, Moynihan King and Rosemary Rowe, looking at Anna Green Gables and its influence on lesbian, on queer culture. So basically, what I did with that is, I wrote a monologue that talked about kind of this awkward, weird relationship to Anne Marie, who is like a Canadian songstress. and frankly, lesbian icon, although she doesn't identify as queer or gay or lesbian. And Anne of Green Gables. Now, if you're familiar with Anne of Green Gables, right? Anne of Green Gables, there's well, they're all famous, iconic scenes. But in the 1984 version with starring Megan Follows, Anne of Green Gables and her bosom friend, hint hint, Diana Barry gets drunk on some cordial. Anyway, it's big drama. And so I talk about this monologue, kind of an autoethnographic monologue that talks about some of my own fictionalized history, and then and again make a karaoke video, sing along video to an Anne Murray classic called "You Needed Me," and I cut the Anne of Green Gables. There was so many. I could have made 4 videos, frankly, out of all of the like longingly looking into each other's eyes in cardigan sweaters. And so when I did the performance, the live performance, we had these screens, and because it was a particularly queer audience, I mean, everybody was just screaming the words to this song, and it was, I mean, for me as a performer, it was one of it was one of the best shows I've ever performed in, just because the audience was just right there. And so instead of say showing documentation of that work, I really wanted to think about how to present that for like an online audience. A festival audience was the target at that time in 2009, and so shot this in in kind of like a plain white background studio, and then being aware of timing, so I am certainly a fan of the jump cut. That's kind of a thing that I know that I use a lot. And for me, it's a way to actually edit like I know it's like I'm literally editing, but I'm also editing my performance, editing for timing and not being concerned about like, oh, I need a match shot, or oh, I need to preserve some sort of integrity of not drawing the viewer's attention to the cut. I quite like a jump cut. So then, and kind of playing in that piece specifically, also playing with, I slow things down, I speed things up. And then after when I'm doing the monologue, after I do the monologue and doing the sing along and asking everybody to sing along, I put myself down at the bottom doing some awkward dance moves with the text underneath. So again, the viewer has to kind of make a decision about where to look and what to do. And what's
Mm,
been interesting over the years is showing that piece in a film festival. And again, if it's a queer film festival, do people sing along? Like in the beginning in 2009 when I was first showing it, people would sing along. But then you show it awkwardly at a in a university classroom or a conference or something, and everyone's just kind of sitting awkwardly. I mean, I always sing along but also it's my work, which also changes the performative aspect of it. So
right.
I guess, again, that's a very long answer, but with an example to of how I look at performativity. I'm looking at my own performativity, of talking with you, even though if I'm just kind of talking head world, what does that do? But I'm also aware of the performativity of the audience, whether that's a live audience or whether that's like a video digital audience.
Mm,
Are you talking back right now? Is that actionable and interactive?
mm,
Um, and yeah, and looking at certainly at the frame and the performativity of the edit, is something that I'm really, I mean, I've been kind of obsessed with for the past 10 years. Is how is my cutting, how is my editing changing and performative, whether it's
mm,
doing a remix on an existing text or a bunch of texts, a bunch of films, bunch of TV shows, or if it's cutting into the work that I'm doing, how is that performative?
mm. No, that's I love that phrase, the performativity of the edit. And the answer you just gave leads directly to my next question, which was I would be curious to hear from you how you think and process the use of your body in your work.
Mm,
And one thing that's you talk about showing this live in queer spaces and in as part of feminist and queer artistic and communities and practices and traditions, and then you put this thing online, or you throw this at a film festival, and it's, you know, it's just out there,
Yeah.
and it's you, and right, and so what is that experience like for you as a person
Mm.
and an artist? You know, how does that? I guess my was like, how does that make you feel? But how do you think about that
Yeah.
as you are creating it?
Yeah. Well, and that's it's such a great question. Because are we talking about trolls? And certainly as I'm growing older, getting older and dealing, I'm all my work is always looking at from my perspective, right? My perspective as a cisgender white middle aging woman. And so from that perspective, that's what I'm presenting. But uh how I feel about putting myself online. Not all works are online. And it was interesting, even just picking with you, like the works that I was like, oh, that would, in my memory of like, oh, that one would be really great to show. And then looking at it again, it's like, no, no, that doesn't go online. I think there's also a discussion to be had about what the internet does as a container, what say Vimeo does as a container or YouTube does as a container, what your own screen does as a container, especially when we add, explicit, like if you look at a couple of these videos, I've had to label them as explicit because what about the children? For language or for I don't have any nudity in my works, but right, like in terms of looking at those parameters. And then so what does that mean? Because coming from and embracing a tradition of queerness within my work that has talked very frankly and openly, explicitly about sex, about identity, especially in this current climate. What happens to that work? What happens between that interaction between commenting and commenter and an artist? And that at the end of the day, I am a person. What and who is coming for me in this digital environment with those containers and those markers of say and who decides what is explicit, who decides what is uh, good for the people, bad for the people, especially with what's going on in the United States right now with trans rights. Who's controlling this, who's legislating this? So looking at work online as an artist who makes work that is can be explicit, and for I make work for my community. Especially when I perform within my community and for my community or adjacent communities, and by that I mean queer festivals across Canada used to perform in the United States. um, so there is absolutely a awareness of where that work is going, and the internet where it's a free for all. One of the reasons I'm using Vimeo over YouTube is just a simple cutting down of commenting, trolling. I'm not interested in those types of interactions. I'm interested in interaction, but I'm not interested in hateful interaction.
Hmm.
um and so that is a big concern, so there's that. So I didn't mean to be a big downer about that. In terms of using my body in the work, like it, because everything is about the body, for me, and from my body specifically, and where I'm coming from, I there's certainly an attention to the frame of how am within the frame, or if I'm using other performers, how they are within the frame. And certainly, I would say in the last decade, probably, I'm very much interested in kind of myself as a talking head for video, because I talk so much, and it's just that's I'm not a dancer, I'm not a movement artist. So it's really about the situatedness of the body. So one of the things I'm doing, I don't know if this has made it onto your list. I have this new series that I'm working on. So the show The Mentalist, right? So Patrick Jane is not a psychic, and
Oh, yes.
chasing a serial killer, Red John, over the course of 8 seasons. Anyway, So one of this was my comfort show during the pandemic. I have a my comfort shows are murder shows. And anyway, so the 10-second intro is basically, just like a very graphic as in, graphics treatment. And I was just kind of obsessed with this. And so I took it apart in Premiere. I should have used After Effects, but I took it apart in Premiere and just started thinking about like what if this show was about someone who's going through menopause or menstruation, or what if this kind of like the blood that is all over the mentalist because of this a serial killer is reconfigured into someone who menstruates or who is going to stop. And so I just renamed it the menopausalist. And so so on Vimeo right now I have this. It's gonna I think it's gonna be longer, but right now I've got it at 10 seconds. It's basically a remix of that, and then also experimenting with AI imagery of these kind of really distorted representations and stills of how if I say what does a woman who menstruates looks like, or what does queer menstruation look like, and some of the images that have been generated from that.
Hmm.
So I'm talking about that in relationship to performativity and the body because see those as avatars for my own experience, or and also how again with AI right now, with digital interpretations based on text prompts, what is coming back to me? So what is my digital reflection from AI? And so just wanted to mention that too as a kind of an extension into performativity or AI performativity, AI embodiment that is I still feel quite connected to.
Hmm. It's interesting for me to hear you say that because we began by talking about kind of your earliest, like more
Yeah.
analog type practices and stuff. And so it sounds like, as technology develops, so does your practice
Mhm.
with it, right? Like, and now we're at the scary AI chatbots. um, but just, again, like I said, a million other questions to ask, but I'm controlling myself for the sake of time. But I want to ask you. So the exciting thing about this um, screening is we have Diana Barry is will be on the webpage, and also your video on Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp. Sorry, it's a longer name, but I don't have it
It's called
in front of me.
Ultimate Sub, Ultimate
Yes,
Dom, Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp.
yes, which is an amazing video that everyone should watch. And then we are also Dana has kindly brought three works that were made in 2009 are now newly uploaded to Vimeo. Um, Boobs, It's a Date, and Splinter New Boots.
Yes.
And these three works again were made in 2009 as part of a project called 52 Pickup. And so could you just provide us with an introduction to this project and yeah, just some introductory context to what folks are watching?
Sure. So yeah, so this was part of a project called 52 Pickup. And I started in 2009, and basically it was just a way to share deadlines. I was working on a really big project at the time, and I needed homework buddies. So HTML, it's all broken right now. It's online, but we don't need to go into the brokenness of it. It's basically, spoiler alert, QuickTime stopped working and being open. And so in 2013, 14, all of the works, they're all there. They're all available. It's just they're hard to get to. Anyway, so basically, the long and the short of it was I asked my friends, does anybody want to make a video a week for an entire year? You could, best case scenario, you make one, or that's the
Right.
worst case scenario. Best case scenario, make 52, but it's whatever you want to do. And basically, here's the deadline. Give me a video a week for the next year. It can be as long as short as you want. What do you think? And so over the course of 5 years, 2009 to 2014, there was about 65 different artists. I didn't know all of them. Friends of friends and friends of friends of friends and friends of friends started to join. The collection has 2,300 videos. One of the aspects of it was I really wanted a non meta like it's not tagged. It's like the negative feedback is like it's really hard to access because nothing is searchable, nothing is tagged. I really wanted the pressure off of that, of this in constant in like indexing. So
Mhm.
anyway, so that but that's another story. So anyway, so that was the project. I ended up doing 3 years of the project. I think 3 years of the project itself. So I think I made 150 videos. And really, again, it was just like I approached it as a sketchbook, and a lot of the
Mhm.
works on there, people coming from similar traditions of experimentation, queer and feminist approaches. So anyway, so that's the 52 pickup project. So then the works that I've shown you, hungover and boob cleaning, splinter new boots, and it's a date, were three works from 2009. And actually, that's right, Diana Barry, You Needed Me, and Ultimate Sub, Ultimate Dom also were part of that. But those last two, the queer pieces, turned out really well. So they had a life of their own in distribution and played film festivals. These three haven't had a life outside of that. So one of them, hungover and boob cleaning, I was
I
very
just
much.
called it boobs. Sorry, there's a
Oh,
full
it's
there's a
okay.
full title.
It's funny because I was like, what was the name of that? And then I was like, oh, um, is I so in 2007 I did a little baby European tour, and by that I mean I went to Poland and I went to Germany. And I had made, and they had asked me to do a performance, and I was aware of like I don't speak Polish, I don't speak German, so there was like a language issue, and so I made this suit, kind of like a like the great balloon suit that some dancers wear. So imagine that, only it's made out of boobs. It's made out of like vinyl boobs. And so what I did is I was able to construct it so that the boobs were filled with vodka. And so I would go into a venue and basically just sit on the counter of the bar, and then people would suck on me. Anyway, so that's the that's how to get you in the door, I guess. And so what this video is the day after of like contending with this outfit, and I have like of basically cleaning it. And the other two are like, especially doing cabaret work. So you asked about performativity, but a lot of where I start with is like, what am I going to wear? Or seeing a fabulous object. And in this splinter new boots, I found these spike heel, for lack of a better word, ski boots. And I mean, they were just really interesting, but they took forever to get on. So one night I was just, kind of messing around and playing and trying on various boots, and then just not being able to get these stupid things on. So and then playing with I cut that to and I was because I was listening to it while I was doing this, of senior coconut track. And so just playing with rhythm and playing, it's a pretty straightforward piece. And then it's a date. I had bought a new camera, like a still camera, a Nikon camera that had limited video, but lots of still stuff. So was in Toronto, and just kind of set it on the table I was out, and just kind of took pictures every once in a while, and then cut it to an excerpt from a how to do good dating 1950s instructional
Mhm.
video that I got from Prelinger. So
Mm.
again, this is these five pieces. So the three new ones and the two old ones were part of this 2009 collection that I made on 52 pickup.
Eh, eh, what I love about them is they're so like in talking about briefly the three shorter ones
Yeah.
is like we I feel like we see they're all very clearly made by you, but we see different kind of elements of your work all within them. And I feel like what I like about it's like the instructional marriage video or whatever, and like the boots or the booth. It's like all these just raw materials that like in your hand come to shape the work. And so like for you, are you like constantly looking for things that like could be used, or does it kind of just happen that way? Like as you were creating this project, like were
Mhm.
you feeling the stress of like, oh, I
Gotta get
need
my
to like
video
find
done.
something for a video, like, oh, those boots are whatever, or is it just kind of like how
Yeah.
does it like begin in your head?
Well, yeah, like, and I think that that's a question too for the other artists that participated was like at the beginning, I
Mhm.
was like, I have so many ideas, I have so many ideas. And then it's like, oh no, the deadline. And I would see people out and I would be like, no pressure. It's all good. I'm not like, the deadline is supposed to be helpful. It's not supposed to like make you run and hide from me because you haven't delivered your video this week.
Mhm,
And yeah, so for me, it was like, yeah, lots of ideas, but then also what's doable and what do I want to like kind of process. And what I
mhm,
mean by that is that just a simple idea, whether it's something, oh, I'm interested in examining this kind of depth in the frame. Like with the splinter boots, it was like I wanted an interesting angle. I wanted to just, I didn't want to have to talk. I'm talking all the time in a lot of my work. And just kind of like seeing what this object does when I cannot get the boot on, because I've just whatever I need to go to the fridge and get a glass of wine, and that's my preoccupation. So like kind of little setups to yes, get the work done for that 1 week deadline in 2009, but also like experimenting again with gestures, experimenting with say one element, like keep it
mhm,
simple, stupid, Dana, is just looking and experimenting with one thing. The more elaborate ones, of course, became more elaborate, and also just because I am such an edit head, really trying to like um to do things that are more performative, because when I get sucked into some of my, say supercuts, extended supercuts or micro cuts or whatever, that labor and that time, like you still have to like budget your week, your day
mhm.
for that type of labor.
Right. And so these are works again that are, we see examples of like looping all the way back to when we talked about kind of me getting to know you through video essay stuff. These are works that like with example of cutting up sorry, you said a marriage promotional, like a
It's a
like
how to, it's a call, I think it's called what to do on a date.
what to do on a date.
What to do
Okay.
on a date.
Yeah, like cutting up the material, right? Like we see, okay, there's like obviously, but you're also again shooting your own footage. And so for you as like when you're knowing that about yourself that you are um such an editor, is your approach like I'm going to just shoot as much as I can and then kind of figure it out in the edit, or are you editing in your head as you're shooting? Like what's your
Oh,
approach?
yeah, good question. Okay,
Mhm.
so yes, for that specifically, like, I mean, I have so many projects I haven't done. I have so much footage. I'm sure, like a lot of makers out there. I certainly went through, I'm going to say a good 15 years where I just shot the shit out of everything. Whatever I had, like how much stuff do you have on your phone right now? How much of it are you ever going to look at again? How much are you going to use? So I'm certainly that type of collector. Is I'm
Mhm.
always shooting, collecting things. Um, am I gonna shoot it and make that for a thing is now a bit of a different brain for me.
Mhm.
So certainly with I didn't have that. I didn't go out that night in Toronto with that camera, understanding that I was going to cut it to this Prelinger clip. I was just experimenting with this camera and knew that, oh, like if I kind of like a time I was playing with kind of a stop motion effect that if you just set up a camera and just hit it every once in a while, that flow and cut it all together, it's going to do something. It's going to activate that. So yeah, and that's how a lot of that type of work starts. Again, I approach it like a sketchbook that, like no pressure, because the pressure will come, in a sound mix, in the cut, in the edit, and because like I am so always in the computer and on my timeline, cutting, 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 when I can like take a breath, it's just a different brain. It's a different
Mhm.
brain for me of like being out here in meat space and shooting
Mhm.
versus getting it into the computer and working with existing footage.
Hmm. And are you a write it out script person, a notes person, a combination? Like when you're on camera, how much of it is like improvisation or just or feeling your way through it
Mm.
through multiple takes, or how much is it like, oh no, the beats that you're gonna hit?
Well, that's also changed.
Mhm.
Uh, because what's more efficient, right? Like I'm very much an improv, feel the audience type of performer, but I have an outline. I have like jokes
Mhm.
I want to hit, or like, and if it ain't working, we're gonna skip ahead. But also it depends on if I'm having it timed to say a projection, and I'm talking
Mhm.
about stage work.
Right.
Performing for the camera, I again often have an outline, notes, that and practice and rehearse what I want to hit. But also, for those of you who were giving lectures during pandemic, maybe you still are doing that type of work. Teleprompter, built-in teleprompter into my camera, really started. I mean, for specifically for lectures, just as a
Mhm.
time saver. So
Right.
I've been experimenting with that, within my practice as well, just to see, is it efficient? What does that do? A video that I don't know if it can sneak in, or not, is a video that I made last year called Deb, and it's basically a happy birthday message for my friend Deb. And I'm a potato. And basically, I won't bore you with how I produced it, but in terms of the take, I shot that, through my laptop. I didn't set up a camera or anything to do that, and I performed it 3 times, to, again, like you're saying, like I knew the story I was going to tell, but just trying to give myself notes to make those new, to the new versions, because there's not a cut in it. And I went with the first take.
Mm.
So again, just I will rehearse or on screen
Mhm.
rehearse or do it several times. And some of the work that like with the other pieces, like with Diana Barry and Ultimate Sub, Ultimate Dom, those are multiple takes, right? So
Mhm.
I've told it
Right.
a couple times. So yeah, that improv is important, for me, but also, like, cut it. If it ain't working, just get rid of it.
Get
Is
rid of it.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, we'll link to your Vimeo and your website and all those things. So everyone needs to go check out Dana's body of work. But I want to close here in talking about Ultimate Dom because I feel like we haven't touched
Yeah.
on that one as much. Um, I'm gonna set something up here, so but feel free to like disagree with me or like
Ah.
definitions, la la la, la like I like totally get in my own head with these kinds of things, and they don't really that matter. But I just to set up here. So this is a video. Like I think as we try to figure out like what is a video essay,
Mm.
right? Like generally the one I go with is that it uses media to think critically about media. Whereas there's a whole other found footage tradition that is taking pre-existing works and making something new out of it in art, right? Like, I don't think like Rose Hobart is a video essay, right? Like we can use that as an example. Um, and so I'm wondering for you, given that you now make like I would assume that you don't think of Ultimate Dom as a video essay, but maybe in or
No.
videographer criticism. So I'm wondering for you, like as someone who's now making video essays and as an artist who uses found footage materials, like could you just talk through how you think about that distinction? Because I do sometimes get asked by people like, oh, why isn't everything a video
Mm.
essay? Um, yeah, explain to us, Dana. Like, I just need to hear your perspective on that distinction as a creator of both.
So just an easy question then, Will. Oh my goodness. I also wanna I
I know.
feel
I'm sorry.
it's all good. I also just feel very aware, talking about all this explicitness, that I need to say explicitly that there is explicit language in, Ultimate Dom, Ultimate Sub. I just need to be able to say that for your listeners. So there's that. Perhaps that makes it not a video essay, but right, like or I participate in a lot of remix traditions, and
Hmm.
traditions. How old are remix traditions? 10, 15, 20 years old. Um,
Francesca Coppa wrote a great book on that. A lot of it's like on fan viding and kind
yeah,
of the queer women who were doing that for going back decades.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I
Hmm.
was thinking of the Wonder Woman, the Dara Birnbaum tape, right? Yeah. So I don't have an answer for you about what is and what isn't a video
Yeah.
essay. What I've been very honored by to have some of my work called video essays that I did not think that they were video essays. So I feel that perhaps I don't know that I'm I mean, I have some thoughts on that, I guess, but in terms of what I'm interested in doing and how I'm seeing distinctions with this is my my what I'm interested in bringing to video essays too is for my own work is performativity, but I also don't mind telling a joke. But and so does that cancel out and does that cancel out some sort of academic prowess in that regard? I'm always very interested too in autoethnographic perspectives. So again, these questions of like, well, is it do we need to arm wrestle about, is it a video essay? Is it a documentary? Is it a personal diary? Like, what are all of these distinctions? And does it
Hmm.
matter? For me, certainly, I capitalize on existing texts for their meaning that they bring and and the meanings that I see in them. Certainly, as a queer artist looking at what I would say, mainstream heteronormative texts that weren't intentionally made to be queer and queering them. So what does that do, within
Hmm.
in a relationship of remix practices or a relationship to videographic essay criticism or videographic criticism, excuse me. So what does that do? So I guess I have more
Hmm.
questions back to you about that. I think that there is an intentionality that I'm noticing within the videographic criticism community that is perhaps a bit more focused on arguments and theoretical frameworks and perspectives that I'm really interested in and interested in engaging with more. Um, yeah, because I don't know that, so if we were looking at ultimate dom, ultimate sub, what is the argument there? The argument is, what would happen if Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins was a dominatrix to Julie Andrews as Maria von Trapp from The Sound of Music and they got together? I don't know if that's necessarily a scholarly argument. So
Yeah. No, I just think it's an important thing to like
yeah,
throw out there. Like, that's why I didn't even really have a question to you attached, because it was like, I'm just like, because I guess like in my brain, the like, I just think of it being online now, just because again, I come from that video essay world, and through that I've discovered works like yours and other various found footage works and stuff. Is like, someone who comes to that on Vimeo, how are they engaging with it? And if all they know is like video essay, they might not know the context. Hence why I like interviewing people like you, so that hopefully someone can be like, oh, what's a really cool video, let me Google this person, and they're like, oh, Dayna, she's done a million interviews and all these other things. So um no, but it's very exciting. And so I guess just to close here, what like what is like ahead? You've alluded to some of it, but kind of where do you kind of see your practice going in the next, in the foreseeable future? Like, is there anything we can coming soon to a computer monitor or screen or concert hall or something near you that kind of is on your radar?
sure. Yeah. Yes, coming soon. So right now I'm working on an exhibition that will be here in Montreal in June. And there'll be some online aspects because it's a video installation project where I'm looking at dreams, uh, but also looking at dreams. Okay, so basically the thesis of that one is people either love hearing about your dreams or hate hearing about your dreams, and I would like to kind of use that in an interactive way. Every morning, or not every morning, but over the last couple of years, when I wake up, I've been, videotaping myself telling a dream. So, anyways, it's a video installation that will have kind of a database of about 50 dreams that I'm telling, but also representations. So that's coming soon. I've also working a lot with AI and AI actors. I have worked with a company to make myself into an AI actor, and so trying to figure out how to use her. Her name is Dayna, because my name is Dana. So ha ha ha, Dayna. And just really trying to again look at embodiment, look at performativity or a lack thereof within the like AI and how that works. So those are a couple projects I'm working on.
I can't wait. That sounds amazing. Dana, thank you so much for joining Recycled Screenings. And please be sure to watch at recycledscreenings.com. consider making a donation. And if you're watching this video, because it will live on YouTube past the screening period, be sure to find Dayna. Um, Links to Dayna's website and Vimeo will always be down below in whatever you're watching. So please check it out. Dayna, thank you again.
Thanks, Will.